In this video, we want to provide you with some more specific examples of how you can use these dimensions of justice to measure equity. What are the opportunities for social equity in resilience priorities and initiatives? One of the goals of MVP 2.0 is to review your previous priorities and develop projects with an eye towards building social resilience. So how can your existing resilience priorities and related projects enhance equity to build social resilience? And how do you assess that? The dimensions of social justice provide a useful way to organize the various ways of enhancing equity.
Enhancing equity through procedural justice.
As a starting point, all communities should assess whether and to what extent the people who will be the most impacted by a process or a set of decisions, and specifically EJ neighborhoods or other priority populations, were involved in the process and in the process of analyzing benefits and burdens. Regular monitoring of who has and who hasn't been involved will help you adjust your outreach accordingly. Consider whether community leaders connected to EJ neighborhoods and priority populations and community members from those communities were involved and who currently does not have access to provide input and feedback on decision making. Another opportunity for measuring social equity in this process can be found in the ways in which information was shared with EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations. When designing and assessing the communication and information sharing process, it is important to assess and document how you know the information was understood, whether the information was shared in an accessible, culturally sensitive, linguistically appropriate way, and how do you know that? How was information shared? Were multiple methods of communication used to distribute information? Were residents without a computer or without computer literacy able to access the information?
As we've mentioned before, involving the wider community in sharing or distributing information will produce much better decisions about your priorities and projects. What municipal departments or public and private agencies and community-based organizations were engaged in sharing or distributing information? And most importantly, are these departments or agencies in regular contact with members of EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations? While the MVP program focuses mostly on proactive climate resilience that builds capacity to reduce the impacts of future climate events, emergency planning for responding to those events is also important to equity. It has been well documented that many people fall into severe social vulnerability after experiencing climate change-related disasters. Do your emergency planning processes help you prepare EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations to cope with and recover from disruptions, emergencies, and disasters?
The handout in your participation guide, titled Equity Centering Considerations, describes some of the things you might think about in your emergency preparedness and response plans, as well as other procedural justice considerations. The process of collaborating with priority populations in the development of plans, disaster mitigation, and response and recovery initiatives is where equity is built in emergency or disaster preparedness.
Enhancing equity through distributional justice.
Monitoring the distribution of benefits and burdens and the process through which those benefits and burdens are produced is a proactive way to uncover opportunities that contribute to social equity. In order to do this analysis well, you need to ask, who are the primary beneficiaries of this project? If one of the priorities is reduced flooding, who will directly benefit from reduced flooding? Consider how the money associated with the project could directly benefit residents and local businesses during the planning and implementation process. Another question to ask is, who will have to carry the burdens of this project? It's important to pay particular attention to any unintended harm, especially in or to EJ neighborhoods or other priority populations in assessing climate resilience priorities. As we spoke about in our last training, socially vulnerable communities are best positioned to uncover potential unintended consequences that directly impact them. For example, would building a passive use green space as part of a flood control project worsen access to spaces needed for physical activity for a nearby EJ neighborhood? It is also important to consider the disruption of people's lives and livelihoods during project implementation processes. For example, if there is construction, how will that impact access to public transportation? Once implemented, could the final project negatively impact people's ability to access food, transportation, housing they can afford, or other resources that contribute to resilience?
Whatever is relevant to the EJ neighborhood or other priority population in your community, it will be important to assess whether your climate resilience priorities and the projects associated with them support protecting, mitigating, absorbing, recovering, adapting, or transforming those conditions.
If you believe that your priorities and their associated projects do build equity, remember, you always have to ask, how do you know? And were people living in EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations involved in determining that? Other things to consider, especially when thinking about selecting projects, include whether the project supports the conditions for protecting the physical, mental, behavioral, and emotional health of EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations. The handout in your participation guide, titled Equity Centering Considerations, provides a list of conditions of vulnerability and other distributional justice considerations.
Enhancing equity through interactional justice.
As we've discussed in previous sessions, developing mutually reinforcing and beneficial relationships is an important aspect of social resilience. The MVP 2.0 process is structured to support developing new relationships or reinforcing existing relationships with EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations. This is why we emphasize holding meetings in the gathering spaces of EJ neighborhoods or other priority populations to the extent that that is welcomed. Engagement that provides regular opportunities for constructive engagement between municipal officials and staff and key leaders in or members of EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations is important. When thinking about projects that are designed to implement your resilience priorities, consider whether the project is structured to build new or reinforce existing relationships with EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations.
The process of looking at your resilience priorities and developing projects from them also provides opportunities to create key leadership positions for members of EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations. How might that experience be leveraged so that members of EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations are positioned to participate in key leadership positions in the wider community, in elected or appointed positions on boards and commissions, in local civic organizations, etc. The quality of the interactions are also important to consider. Did community members feel respected and that their input was valued? The quality of the relationships can be seen in our openness to the ideas of others. Have relationships been developed such that participating members of the EJ neighborhoods and other priority populations have influence over decisions made related to the priorities or projects?
In the next video, we will delve into greater detail about the various metrics you can consider using when monitoring your progress towards creating equity and social resilience.